Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today I want to talk about something that's pretty disturbing. I talk a lot about The Threat, written by David M. Jacobs. It was a book that was published in 1998 that pretty much dealt with alien abductions and the hybridization plan that these aliens are conducting, carrying out. And actually, he did a follow-up book that was published in 2015 called Walking Among Us, The Alien Plan to Control Humanity. And if you thought that The Threat was disturbing, well, this takes it to another level completely. In Walking Among Us, basically, it talks about how these, the end game to this whole alien abduction scheme, what's been going on here. These beings are right now, according to Jacobs, and for a long time now, there are beings among us, more and more all the time, apparently. They look just like humans, and they're not called hybrids. He calls these Hubrids. Basically, these are the final chapter, the piece de resistance of the whole alien hybridization program, where they have these beings that look just like human beings among us, and a lot of the abductees, people who were abducted, throughout their lives, are actually called upon to help acclimate these Hubrids to everyday life, everyday human life, so they don't stand out like a sore thumb. And it's very, very scary. And what's interesting about this book is the beings. I mean, the abductees themselves. They all tell a similar story about what's going on, and they had no idea that each of them were telling these same similar type stories. So when they're meeting with Jacobs, they tell these stories, and then he comes to conclusions on what's going on here. Basically, what's happening is they're trying to absorb humanity. As crazy as all of this sounds, but I guess you gotta let's take it from the beginning here, and then you have to unpack everything as you go through history. I mean, basically these things are showing up. Apparently, these things are here for a long time. Some of the people that are abductees go all the way back to the 1930s. People that started realizing they were getting abducted by these beings goes all the way back to the 1930s for some of them, according to Jacobs. And who else would know? I mean, this guy has talked to well over 1,000 different people. And of course, this guy he's a retired Temple professor. Actually, he taught one of the only class in the United States, in the world at the time, that dealt with UFOs and aliens in a college setting. So you have that as a feather in his cap, and then you have the fact that he's researched this. He's put many of these people under hypnotic regression. Thousands. And basically he stuck with, I think it was 14 or 18 different people he talked about in this book. He kept it to that limit. And so what's going on here is, if you go back in time and you look at the beginning of this, UFOs, people start noticing flying saucers and whatnot. So apparently, you take it through the different levels. Now, first people were seeing flying saucers. That's tough enough to admit. Yeah, I saw a flying saucer. Then you have people in the 50s who actually started to see some humanoids standing outside of these landed craft. That would happen a lot. Actually, there was a lot of different cases all over the world. A lot of them, or famous ones, happened in France in the 1950s. And of course, then you had abductions start kicking in. And then people, in the 50s and 60s, you start hearing about abductions. And of course, by the late 60s, people start noticing these cattle mutilations. Now, I've talked about cattle mutilations before, and I think in the context of all this, now Jacobs really doesn't get into that in his book here. He doesn't talk about the cattle mutilations and how that really might have an effect on this, or how that plays into all this. But I do think that it's very possible, when you consider everything, that basically they're draining the blood from these things to feed on. But anyway, you go down the line here. So what is the purpose of a hybridization program? I mean, as crazy as it sounds, if you're creating alien hybrids, that means at some point you're trying to create a certain being that's going to fit in with society and that no one could notice. I mean, so that's what he's laying out here. He's laying this out, and he has the evidence that he has is basically from the testimony of all these different people that he put under hypnotic regression. It's a very scary concept, and I highly actually recommend you read this book. Actually, I'm going to leave a link here. If like there's a thing on Amazon Audible, you could actually listen to it for free. You could actually, just like a podcast, you could listen to it instead of reading it, and you could listen to this whole thing for free, and it will blow your mind. So even more so, I think, than The Threat in a way, because I guess the end game here is at some point they're going to basically take over the planet. I mean, that's the whole plan to begin with. And that's why, I mean, if you think about it, okay, flying saucers, UFOs, all that stuff, we're still seeing them all the time. They're flying around, they're caught on camera. I just saw a lot of different pictures in the past week here, new pictures. It's amazing. It's a phenomenon that does not quit. It does not go away. So obviously, these things, they make mistakes, and they don't want this to be known. They don't want their presence known here, and that's why their whole plan, this whole hybridization thing, has to be a secret. Their whole presence here, they try to keep it a secret. But the whole thing is at some point, I guess, if you read this book or listen to it, like I'll leave that link. You can listen to it for free. You just do a 30-day trial on this Amazon Audible, and you can listen to that book right now for nothing, just like a podcast. But if you listen to that book and then think about the implications that are laid out in this book and what this all means, I mean, that means there are these beings. They look just like humans. You wouldn't be able to tell a difference. I mean, they're all different races, creeds. All different all over the globe too, apparently, and so they're being installed here across the globe for some point that's going to come in the future that involves the abductees themselves. The abductees themselves are actually being taught on how to handle non-abductees, and they're actually part of this too somehow. It's very mind-boggling. But I guess the whole scary part about it to me is the fact that these beings themselves are being secretive about their presence here on this planet. They always have been, right? They always have been. And at the same time, we have governments of the world being secretive about this, and really to the detriment of humanity. I mean, that's, when the more, after you, and again, this is something that Jacobs doesn't really bring up in his book, but these beings are among us right now, okay? So at some point, there's going to be something that happens, a change, whether it takes place over a long period of time or whether it's a sudden thing, right? Where basically these beings is starting from the very top. It's these insectoid praying mantis ones. They're in charge, and then it's the grays, the tall grays, and also these reptilian creatures. Apparently, according to Jacobs, it seems like he suspects that the reptilians themselves are actually just like the grays. They're like workers, and he suspects that these insectoids, actually, that the reptilians themselves are the product of a hybridization program that occurred on a different planet somewhere, where apparently there was reptilian intelligent beings, and now they've been absorbed by these insect praying mantis beings, and now they have them working for them along with the grays. And then there's different levels of hybrids he talks about, and then the Hubrids that are among us, the ones that are already here among us. And it's not just him who's talked about these beings that are among us. There's been other people, like filmmaker James Fox has talked about these beings among us, these alien beings. You wouldn't be able to identify them. They look just like any other person, right? So, but the difference is that they have telepathic powers just like the aliens, and they can control human beings just like the aliens. So it's very scary. And not only that, there's also these security hybrids that actually protect the Hubrids. So if anybody tries to ask too many questions or anything like this, these security hybrids step in. And so it's a whole very scary concept. But the whole, as you read this book, and I'm thinking, the scariest part to me now comes, it's something that he really doesn't get into in his book, is the fact that this has been covered up by the governments. because it makes it even worse for humanity, because everyone's oblivious to this. I mean, right? Most of the world right now, I mean, because this sounds crazy. I mean, if somebody who has no knowledge whatsoever about extraterrestrials, UFOs, the history of it all, was to listen to what I'm talking about right now, they would think I'm some kind of a nut, right? In fact, I sound like a nut talking about it because it sounds crazy, right? But see, the problem is that because the governments of the world have kept this thing a secret all these years, is that now who knows if it could be prevented? Who knows if this in fact is happening? How could we stop it? How could we end it now? Because we're still not told the truth by the governments. And then you wonder another thing now. Now, if there's these Hubrids among us, have some of them weaseled their way into these top secret government programs, and now they're pulling the strings, right? And actually, maybe that's one of the reasons, as crazy as that sounds, that could be one of the reasons why these governments are keeping this secret, because they're being controlled by maybe alien Hubrids among them, who are basically saying, you can't let this out to the public, you can't let this out to the public. It's understandable in 1947, when this thing first happened, okay, we can't, this is, the people will panic, right? Of course, I could understand that. That makes sense. Okay, back in 1947, you don't want to say, something crashed in Roswell. It wasn't from our planet, and there was these alien beings. Next thing you know, there's a worldwide panic that there's an invasion from outer space going on. I could understand that, but we should have been brought in on this a lot quicker than what's going on now. I mean, okay, it's good that we have some things going on now, but it's not good enough. Because there's more time, every year that goes by, there's more and more, this hybridization allows this hybridization program to go on, and everyone's oblivious to it, and particularly a vast majority of the scientific community. There's nobody out there studying this. They're trying to figure out a way to stop it. Unless there are some government scientists that we don't know about that are trying to figure out how to stop this. But then again, how do we know they're not under control now? If this is real, right, then that means we don't know what's going on. It could be too late. It could be already over. See, the problem is though, if you came out with this, then nobody would trust anybody. You wouldn't know who's who, right? You just wouldn't know. Okay, anybody who acts weird would become a suspect. You know how the human race acts. So it's a rock and a hard place, and I don't know what the answer is. But it's a very scary prospect, the entire thing. So it just makes me think that we might be done. The human race might be finished because of this, because of what's going on here. And basically these insectoid, these praying mantis things, they want to basically control, absorb this planet. They take over. It takes a lot of time, right? Next thing you know, and the other thing is that Jacobs talks about is that these beings, these Hubrids, they only mate with, humans, regular humans. So they keep. So then if you have a Hubrid, gets married to a regular woman who's just a regular old human, right? And then the babies are half alien, and then it takes over, just keeps propagating itself, generation after generation after generation. You keep doing that over and over years, over different generations, multi-generations. Next thing you know, there's more of them than there are human beings left. But it has to be, at the same time, you have to look at, we're almost at 8 billion people in this world right now. It has to be a tough job for them. But if this is real, right? If this is what's going on, then we're done. Because it's gonna eventually they're gonna take over, and we're all sitting around here basically like sheep waiting for it to happen, because our governments have been keeping this secret for so long. It's just a scary thought. I don't know what to say other than I think that you should, if you're interested in this subject, you should really check out that book. It's scary as all hell. Like I said, I'll leave the link there for you. You can listen. Like I said, you could actually listen to it if you want. You don't have to read it. You can listen to it for free. But I don't know. I don't know Again, it sounds crazy at the same time. I understand that. But I mean, once you accept, the history of this, I mean, there has to be something. Okay. There's flying saucers. We admit that. Okay. A lot of us, okay, we know. And there's beings, obviously. There's occupants in them. Okay. What are they doing? Why are they flying around? They're not just here to fly around all the time, but that's what it's, but they are flying around. We do see them. They're caught in pictures and film and video all the time still. Right. And so if that's the case, then what's and then you realize, okay, they're abducting people, they're taking sperm out of men, they're taking eggs out of women, right? They're doing stuff, they're impregnating women, and then secretly they don't even realize it, and then they're taking out a fetus 2 months later, right? And then taking over from there. So if that's what they're doing, then okay, this is their program has an end game, and that end game means alien beings among us. And it's a scary thought.